We started the Westchester Angels about 4 years ago. We started very humbly. We started in our friends. I'm sorry for that. I don't know how to shut that off. We started in our friend Rob Kistner's business, Digital Arts Experience, complete with red, green, and yellow chairs and pictures of Super Mario on the wall. And then we graduated to the KOI shared workspace, and here we are today. We're the new angel group in the tri-state area, but as we get into the conversation, we do lead a lot of initiatives that brings a lot of angel groups together. So that's the short of it. More information is on LinkedIn profile if you need any more.
That's great. That's great. So, and just a side note, the Mario stickers on the walls weren't your idea, right? That was that was Rob's idea.
Rob has a business that caters to after school activities for middle school, high school kids, 3D printing, and so we started very humbly.
Yeah, all good stuff. That's great. So that's a little bit about the Westchester Angels, and I know you guys have been just a solid group in the community. We've had meetings at our space for a couple of years now at this point with you guys. Great group of guys. Always have a great meeting, and then there's always the invite for cocktails and nachos downstairs afterwards.
It's part of the bar. Yeah, it is. And while you're discussing that, every angel group in the tri-state area has their own personality and temperament. We'll get into the New York Area Angel Alliance. But the way we run our meetings, we're serious about investing, but we like to have fun. So all of our meetings wind up back before the virus at the Hudson Grill Bar. And we do that for a reason. It allows investors to talk to startups in a very relaxed atmosphere. We allow service providers to come and talk. So it's a really part of our personality.
That's great. That's very cool. So so that's the Westchester Angels. And then I know there's the New York Area Angel Alliance. I know you're the founder and self-proclaimed chief bottle washer.
Right. Well,
so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have the luxury and privilege to be able to be the leader of the Westchester Angels full time. I'm not compensated. My compensation are hugs, handshakes, and thank yous. And I visited all the angel groups in New York City, from the New York Angels, the Harvard Business School Alumni Angels, the Gangels, the Golden Seeds. There's probably about 15, 20 angel groups in New York City. And I had an idea to bring all the leaders together because we all are in the same space. So I had a very large summit meeting, and all the angel leaders got together. And what we do now is we have monthly deal flow calls every month to share deal flow. We've had a couple of emergency calls about how angel groups are, what angel groups are doing in this current virus space. So if you're an investor or if you're a startup, you can go to the New York Area Angel Alliance.com website. It has a listing of all the angel groups in the area. You could click on those links. So if you're an investor and you want to get involved in angel groups, there's an angel group for you. If you're a startup and you're looking to get funded, this is a one-stop shop for you, for you to find out which angel groups you want to apply to.
Oh, that's great. That's very cool. And so in terms of that, I mean, you've obviously been in touch with a lot of angel groups, and everyone seems to be more or less going through the same things right now. I mean, we're all experiencing the same ups and downs with the landscape. So I mean, what's going on with the other groups in terms of like activity and meetings, or meetings still being held? Are they like this one?
So I've been on conference calls with the Angel Capital Association, which is the nonprofit umbrella over most all angel groups in the country. And I've had a couple of conference calls with local area angel groups to find out how they're proceeding or not in this current environment. And the overall majority of angel groups are going forward with virtual investor meetings. And one of the things that the New York Area Angel groups are doing, the first thing every angel group did in this environment, outside of having virtual meetings and maybe one or two have postponed their meetings, but all of us have reached out to our portfolio companies to see how we can best help startups that we've already invested in. And for the Westchester Angels, we're the new guys on the block. We don't have the largest portfolio so far. We've invested close to $1 million in our history. But you talk about the New York Angels, the Golden Seeds, the 37 Angels. Those angel groups have dozens, hundreds of angel group of startups in their portfolio. That's a full-time job, reaching out to all of the startups to see how we can best help. And what the Westchester Angels has done over and above what we're doing to reach out to our portfolio companies is I'm intimately involved in Westchester County. I actually had lunch with County Executive Latimer a couple of months ago before the virus hit. I know the heads of the economic development, and we've gathered our members to help volunteer, to help small business owners in our community. And as soon as the SBA landscape, which is a mess right now, gets sorted out, we're ready to help small business owners rebuild their business, because our members have a lot of expertise in a lot of different industries, and it just makes sense to pool our collective experiences together to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's important too. And I think what's interesting to see come out of this is, I mean, I guess right now, what are the areas or startups or industries, if you will, that are hit the hardest with this, and what do you think they need out of this right now?
You know, Warren Buffett is sitting back and he's probably drooling, because this is where he makes his investments. He doesn't really invest when the markets are high. You know, the markets have come up a little bit. Hopefully they're going to stay stable. But a lot of angel investors, unless you have some challenges with your health, heaven forbid, or your family members have challenges, most angel investors are looking at this as an opportunity. And certainly the landscape is different. There are certain industries that are going to do well and are doing well, and there are certain industries that are going to have challenges. You know, esports is booming, and we're having one of an esports company pitch at our next investor meeting. That's not an angel investment. It's an ETF that was put on the New York Stock Exchange called NERD. And I know the founders, two young CFAs. So in these different times, we're having a little different investment opportunity for our members. So, you know, alcohol is thriving. Cannabis is thriving, because in California, cannabis is a compassionate use industry. Far be it for me to argue with that conversation. You know, anything virtual is doing well, as compared to industries that are going to be challenged. Retail, travel, musicians are struggling. I know, Dick, you're on the line. You would know better than anybody about the challenges musicians are having. You know, athletes, sports.
It's the entire music industry has been completely turned upside down. There probably won't be any live concerts of any consequence until at least next year, and big festivals maybe next summer.
Oh yeah. We're rolling in a festival season too, so
I was actually going to be going into a recording studio. We have a little band, John. We've played together. Dick, I was going to go into a recording studio at my friend Lincoln Schliefer's a recording studio, and G.E. Smith is out of business, and Larry Campbell's out of business. We're going to record with them. I mean, that would be an unbelievable situation, but we've postponed that. So a little diversion here, but it just goes to show that there are industries that are in favor, and there are industries that are going to be challenged, even as we hopefully start to recover here, and hence the opportunities.
It's true. That's a good point for sure. And I guess the startups that you guys have worked with in the past, and when you're reaching out to them, is there any sort of common request for help, or is it kind of like across the board, or are you just starting to reach out to them at this
well,
point?
we've reached out to all of our companies, and you know, angel investing is, we invest in good teams and good leadership. We'd rather invest in a good team with a good idea than a great idea and a marginal team. And right now, leadership for startups is really critical.
Yeah.
If investments are going to be made, they're going to be made in industries that are in favor right now, but more importantly, with teams that really get it. You know, unfortunately, if you're a college kid coming out of college, you don't have a lot of business experience, and you have some idea for an app, those are going to be challenging angel investments. Um, if you're a seasoned professional or you have experience and you have a really unique idea that can disrupt an industries, you know, the cream is going to rise to the top here.
Mm.
And one of the other things that we've seen before the virus is crazy valuations. And, you know, valuations is one of the key metrics of how we invest, whether it's an
Sure.
equity position or if it's a convertible note. You know, we've seen valuations of companies done $100,000 with a convertible note with a cap of $10 million. You know, that's a challenging investment. So in this atmosphere, I would expect to see valuations come down to more reasonable levels, especially for startups that are just getting going. If they're you know, if they got beta or whatever. If you have revenue and you're a revenue company and you have a $500,000, $1 million in revenue, the multiples of those revenue and valuation should be a lot more realistic. So that might be a silver lining. That
Mm.
valuation should be a little more reasonable going forward, because you know, investments in businesses is going to get tighter. You know, a lot of monies get tied up. You know, if you're going to banks, and the capital requirements are much more difficult now than they've ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point. So you think there's almost going to be some sort of like leveling a little bit. I mean, making numbers a little more realistic. I guess in the long run, though,
Yeah.
that's going to give, you know, the startups that kind of come out of this a little bit more of a chance, right? Because they're not going to be suffering under these gigantic, you know, valuations out of the gate.
Yeah, and a lot of startups, listen, if you're in a poor financial, a lot of startups are just not going to make it. You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you know, a lot of startups, they go hand to hand anyway. This is going to put a challenge to startups. I mean, everybody's applying for government loans, and I'm on top of that whole thing through the Westchester Economic Division and the SBA loan landscape, which I'm not really qualified to talk about the specifics.
Mm.
It's a mess. It's going to take time for startups to get money. And a lot of startups are just not going to make it, unfortunately, if they're not properly funded at this point.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough one, right? I mean, I think this entire period in the business landscape and what it is it's just shown us that it's just one of these scenarios where I don't think everything is cake and butterflies, you know, and we have to figure out how to get through it and what the best plan of action is there. But I mean, I guess on that note, any optimistic, you know, notes from your side of things, you know,
But,
stuff you're seeing out there.
you know, we like to look at the glass as half full rather than half
Mhm.
empty. We're optimistic and we're excited about the opportunities that are going to present themselves to invest in startups going forward. We certainly will be looking at things with a little sharper eye, more emphasis on the leadership abilities, but there's going to be opportunities out there. And all the angel groups in the tri-state area are focused on new opportunities. I just had a conference call with all the leaders Monday afternoon. So this is a timely call because I'm educated now on what's going on with all the angel groups in the area. Everybody's going forward virtually. Everybody's going to go forward with a little sharper eye to industries and leadership and valuations. But there are going to be opportunities, and that's why the Westchester Angels, our next investor meeting is going to be on April 23rd. It's going to be virtual. We have two portfolio companies that are pitching. We have another company that has an interesting no downside risk to sign up a term sheet. And then we have my friends at Nerd, not a typical angel investment, but it's an esports investment with a publicly traded company on New York Stock Exchange. And, you know, I think very, very highly of those. All four startups that are pitching think
Mhm.
very highly of the leadership, and that's critical right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So not just looking at the product, but the team behind it as well as the leadership. it's understandable because if anything survives this, it's going to be under good leadership, without a doubt.
Correct.
How did these startups come to find you? You know, in the midst of
Yeah.
everything that's going on.
Well, that hasn't changed. There's one platform that brings angel investors together with startups. It's called GUST, GUST.com. That's where startups make their applications. They put their slide deck, their financials, and then once they put their application on the GUST platform, they could probably apply to the majority of angel groups across the country because that
Mhm.
platform comes free with your membership in the Angel Capital Association. There are a lot of angel groups that use other platforms. The second most popular, I would think, is the Proceeder platform.
Mhm.
That was created by the Golden Seeds. It has a little more bells and whistles. A lot of angel groups have their own platform, like the ArcView Fund, which I'm a member of and I'm a director of. It's the largest cannabis investing fund in the country. They have their own platform. And, there's a distinction with angel groups between funds and traditional angel groups where due diligence is done in groups and individuals write their own checks out. Funds right now are fully funded. They have cash in the bank as
Mhm.
compared to, individuals writing their own checks out.
Yeah.
But the Gus platform is critical, and I advise startups every day to agonize over that platform in their application. And another thing that Westchester Angels are going to be doing next week, as soon as we get everything set up, we're reaching out to the probably 100 or so applicants on the Gus platform
Mhm.
with free mentorship on their slide deck and their application on Gus. And we have an intern that's gathered all their email addresses. So we're going to be setting up, I think, on Calendly. I can never pronounce that platform. Um, but we're going to be providing a half-hour free, no strings attached mentorship for startups just to help
Mhm.
give back and make sure that the startup's application and their pitch deck is the best it can be. So if there are startups on the line, it's only going
Mhm.
to be for startups that have applications on the Gust platform.
Got it.
And I'd be willing to have a conversation with any startup to help at that point.
Yeah, that's great. Makes sense. Well, and then I guess for those startups, and it sounds like this is one of the services you're offering, but how do you speak to these startups to give them advice in terms of how to maybe form some sort of pivot, in the current landscape? If they're going down one route and you guys see another way, I mean, have you had those conversations, or is that
Yeah,
something you're
well,
thinking about?
angel investors traditionally are not bashful. We are definitely not bashful. Um, and
Sure.
and John, that goes right back to the leadership conversation. We
Yeah.
learned a
Yeah.
long time ago that you can't help people that don't want help. We've had 23-year-olds that have never had a paycheck before in their life. They've seemed to have accumulated all the business knowledge on the planet. We cannot help people that don't want that kind of help, but we're here to help, and that's part of the angel investing space. Even non-virus is
Yeah.
we invest, and we're the first guys on the ladder after friends and family. We're had the riskiest investment profile because these are very young companies. But not only do we provide investment dollars, but we provide help wherever we can. We like to say that my partner Michael Weiser came up with a good um, uh, a statement. We provide good Rolodex for people that actually remember what Rolodexes are, and we're here to help. We want to see startups succeed, whether we invest or not.
Yeah. 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 Well, then I think that's the right mentality for sure.
Yeah.
So, I'm getting a couple questions on both the chat and my phone here at the at the same time. So
Yeah.
here's one. So what angels focus on as an investment changed? Are you looking for different structures and how startups plan to actually scale, once they've initiated themselves and their business actions?
Well, if you talk about technical structure, at this point in time, if you're a C corp, that's a more appealing structure than an LLC because the C corp
Mhm.
comes with a board of directors. And if you have a really good, knowledgeable board of directors, that's critical in this time because usually the board of directors, usually the startup will have a seat. Usually it's an odd number, 3, 5, or 7. Um, but a board of directors, we just got off a conference call with Acrolis, which is the pearl in the Westchester Angels oyster so far. And they have a really terrific board of directors that's really helping guide them in these difficult times. So, so far as technical stuff, we'd like to see C Corps right now with a really mature and experienced board of directors to help the startups guide themselves in these challenging times.
Got it. And here's another one. This is a little more specific, but
Sure.
do you have recommendations on medtech investors?
MedTech, yeah. We're seeing, listen, we've seen a lot of platforms that bring physicians together with patients in a lot of different walks of life, from
Sure.
weight loss to teleportal for medicine. Um, Obviously, those startups, if they have traction, they should be doing very, very well right now.
Yeah.
Doctors' offices are overwhelmed. A lot of people don't want to. I have my monthly checkup in May. I'm not very excited to go to any doctor's office at this point because you might have some sick patients there. So, the telemedicine industry is one of those industries that could be very interesting going forward. But that's a crowded space. It was a crowded space beforehand. Westchester County has the bio incubator right outside in Valhalla, which is in between Regeneron and New York Medical Center. There's a lot of really interesting startups there that have telemedicine platforms. So those kind of applications would certainly be something angel investors would like to would visit going forward.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. And here's another one kind of in the same vein, but a little more specific. So arts and angel investment. Obviously, we talked about musicians and how they're so hard hit. I know music's close to your heart personally, but have you seen anything out there that's been a good match for connecting arts? Whether they're musical artists, musicians, or actual artists, with investment opportunities.
Yeah, so the way angels make money is we invest in companies early, and we only invest in companies that want to scale and execute to build their business for an exit. We only 99 times out of 100, angels make money if there's an exit opportunity. Traditionally, arts and music do not provide those type of opportunities for angels to invest. That said, we've seen platforms that bring musicians together. We've seen platforms that early on we saw a platform that allows musicians to create a music and audiences can create lyrics. But we really haven't seen in the 4 years, in the hundreds and hundreds of startups that we've touched, we haven't seen a lot of startups in the music and the art space for that reason. There's, we don't know, there's no way to make money in those for an angel investor.
Yeah. Sandy, there was the one with the music lessons.
Yeah, music lessons for sure. Virtual music lessons. We've seen a bunch. We've seen a handful of startups that are bringing musicians together with amateur musicians. But that's what we call virtual matchmaking. Virtual matchmaking is oftentimes a difficult and angel investment because you're only as good as the supply of musicians and the supply. You're really a virtual matchmaker, if you will. So those could be challenging investments because, again, we're looking for companies that are going to go from very low revenue or no revenue to scale to 10 or 20 million dollars, so they could be bought out for hundreds of millions, and we might be able to get a 15-20 return on our investment. And that type of investment scales out the investments that are going to fail. These are very risky investments. On average across the country, about 60 to 70% of angel investments fail with absolutely no return whatsoever. So most angel investors that do this, that want to do this seriously, create a well-diversified portfolio of angel investments, different industries maybe, or in their areas of expertise, to balance out the losers with the handful of big winners that we might see.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then kind of in the artist vein, but moving a little bit away just a bit. So, you know, creatives, people in the creative industries. So maybe not artists, but graphic designers, things like that. Not necessarily them themselves, but platforms that would kind of avail opportunities to people like that or in those professions. Have you come across anything like that, or would something like that be interesting in a time similar to now, you know, with what's going on?
You know, it really depends upon the leadership again and their business plan. You know, one of the challenges with virtual matchmakers and those types of industries is there's no barrier to entry. We don't know if somebody in Iowa is doing the same thing, if not better. You know, as compared to a widget that has a robust patent estate that's going to disrupt an industry, at least there's a barrier to entry. So the competition is challenging because we just don't know if there's going to be another platform out there somewhere in the country that's going to be better. And a lot of those startups, those are races. You know, you got to scale and get traction before your competitors can scale. So it's really a race.
Interesting. So startups that are utilizing or leveraging emerging markets outside of the country itself, have you had anything come across your plate like that?
Yeah, we actually did a lot of research on a company called Peel Away Sheets, and they provide hospitals and different camps where you put hospitals. It's a really arduous task to change bed sheets for critically ill patients. So Peel Away, really good young entrepreneur, Max Cohen, has this platform where you put a sheet on a bed, but it has 7 layers and you peel it away. They've actually pivoted. Their biggest market is overseas in the Middle East. The majority of their business is overseas. I mean, we didn't invest, but we like the team. But scaling, it doesn't really matter where you scale as long as you get scale. So we would take a look at those kind of companies that want to scale. But for the Westchester Angels, we would only consider investing in startups that are physically headquartered in New York or the New York City or the surrounding area, because the only way we found out to know if there's a really good leadership or a team is to spend time with them, as much time as we can, without big obnoxious and leading them on. You know, sometimes we throw startups a wrench to see how they handle it. You know, we want to visit them in their location, and sometimes we visited them at a kitchen table because that's where they're doing their business, or shared workspace such as KOI has. And we like to go out to the bar with them and have a drink or two, see how they talk and react. And we like to invest in good teams and good leadership.
Cool. Very cool. Here's another good one. So do you know of or anticipate new opportunities for angels in the area of renewable energy? Which is, obviously I feel like it gets more interesting every year, but anything?
We've seen a lot of, we've seen a bunch of startups in renewable energy, wind, and that tends to get very technical. And you really would have to have that expertise in that space to do a good job on that. But alternative energy certainly would be an interesting startup for an angels to consider, especially if there are utility patents issued, which would be a barrier to entry for that new technology. So that would certainly be fertile ground for an angel investment.
Absolutely. I can imagine having a patent probably helps a little bit.
Well, patents are a really good thing because they could protect the space. We've often had patents reviewed by patent attorneys just to see what the claims are. But a patent, in order to protect your patent, you have to spend money and time to protect your patent. So a patent may not help a startup, but it may help the sale of a startup on an exit because the larger company would have the wherewithal to protect the space. I've invested in a company that had robust patents that were infringed upon, but they just didn't have the time or the money to go after the infringers.
Yeah, I could imagine that's a lengthy battle that probably costs a lot of time, effort, and money, of course.
Yep.
Now, is that something that the angels would get involved in? If I had a patent on a product or service that I bring to the table to the angels, and you say, "Hey, this looks good, let's move forward," is that a service that the Westchester Angels or angel groups would provide, or does that fall a little bit outside and you just hope that they kind of come to the table with that already kind of thought through?
That's where good leadership comes in and good advisors. There's a lot of gestation period. It's going to take years for the patent to get issued. There's such things as provisional patents, which are very simple patents, but they're not patents. It just protects your place in line going forward. So in general, a patent, if it's done well, can protect your space and prevent it. It is a good barrier to entry.
Got it. Very cool. That makes sense. Oh, here's a classic one. So personal preference when it comes to investment vehicles. So we've got convertible notes or equity.
Fair question. We see this a lot. Wherever possible, listen, if you ask 10 angel investors, you'll get 11 different opinions. We've invested in equity. We've invested in convertible notes. And for those out there, a convertible note is really a debt instrument that allows you to convert to an equity position based on a trigger. It's usually the next raise. Sometimes it's a time element. Convertible notes do come with some challenges. If the VCs are coming in the next round, sometimes they could put the startups in a very compromising position by saying, if you want our millions of dollars, we want to be preferred equity, everybody else is common equity. So you get into challenges like that. There's a couple of things that will end the conversation with angel investors right away. Number one is a safe note. A safe note is developed by our friends in California as an easy way for startups to raise money. It's not a very legal, costly document, but it doesn't provide angels with any legal motivation for the startup to actually convert that note. Safe notes will usually end the conversation because it adds an additional risk to an already risky investment. The second thing that ends conversations right away with angels is, please sign an NDA. We've had startups that have been poorly advised by attorneys to have NDAs signed. And I counsel the startups to fire those attorneys as soon as possible. Because if I were to sign an NDA for every startup that I touched, I wouldn't be able to pick up the phone and talk to anybody. I wouldn't be able to talk to, NDAs in the cannabis industry would prevent me from investigating almost any angel investment in the cannabis industry. So safe notes, NDAs, basically end the conversation right away. You'll find a handful of investors that may invest in a safe note. By and large, no angel group in New York City is going to consider a safe note.
Interesting. It's good to know. So how about this one? So the current climate, has it changed the general preference of early profitability for a company versus pushing for rapid growth, even though maybe initially it might burn through a lot more capital?
It's interesting. You've seen a whole host of IPOs recently, Eventbrite, Lyft, Uber. These companies started as an angel investment years ago. They went into, now they're traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and they're still not profitable. So there seems to be a push to build revenue, but I think it's a balance. You really want to build revenue till you can get to some sort of profitability. But that's an individual conversation based on individual startups and how they plan to scale. And that's where the due diligence comes in for angel groups. We do a lot of due diligence. We kick a lot of tires simply to compensate for the risk that angel investors will take.
Got it. Yeah, good to know. And what does that process look like? From me, pretend I'm a startup and I walk through the door. I meet Sandy, right? And
Yeah.
I want I want to talk my future with the Westchester Angels. Walk us through kind of what that looks like, what the timeline is on something
Well,
like
there's a gestation period to get money from angels. And I advise startups, if you're looking to raise $500,000 or $1 million, that's going to take you 6 months minimum, because first you have to make an application on the Gust or similar platform. And then from there, your only objective is to continue to get to the next conversation and get screened, so you could pitch to the investors of each angel group. We go through probably on every other month a couple of maybe 100, 150 applications. We screen 8 companies in person via Zoom now before the virus, in order to select the 3 or 4 that I'll pitch to our investors. And when a startup makes a pitch, their only obligation is to continue to get to the next conversation, to get into due diligence.
Yeah.
Due diligence could take weeks or months, depending upon logistics, depending upon the complication of the industry. If you're in the medical industry, if you have a medical device, those tend to be more complicated because insurance and things like that. So every due diligence effort that the Westchester Angels has been through takes on its own time frame and personality. We try and respect the startups. We don't want to mislead them. If we're not interested, we're going to tell them right away. If we are interested, we want to do a lot of due diligence and give them an answer within a reasonable amount of time, because we respect the startups' challenges to raise money.
It's funny you brought up medical devices. One of these questions, right when you said that, do you have medical device expertise or invest in medical devices with potentially short FDA paths?
Yeah, so
Interesting.
we did a lot of research in our early days in a medical company, and we decided not to pursue medical devices because it's a complicated space. And then we became experts literally overnight when White Plains Hospital investment arm, East Post Road Ventures, became members of the Westchester Angels. We have doctors, physicians, people that understand the space. So now we entertain medical platforms, we entertain medical devices. We certainly will not entertain molecules going through clinical trials. Those are for bigger boys. That's really a big pharma or biotech application.
Sure.
But medical devices are tough, because it could take you years to get market validation. And that's why we like to see startups that have some sort of revenue, because it's market validation as compared to a company that has a product in beta. There's no market validation. And that's some of the challenges we see with medical devices and more medical devices. It could take years to get some market validation. Every startup thinks their business or platform is the best thing since sliced bread. We like to talk to customers of these startups to confirm that.
So here are two more number-based questions. So number one, is there a valuation or dollar amount that would separate an angel investor from a PE group?
Yeah, it's kind of a fuzzy line. Usually if you're going to raise $1 million or less, or maybe a little more, that's really an angel raise. Because angels, traditional angel groups, our investment will put anywhere from 50 up to maybe 150. We're the new guys on the block. The Golden Seeds, New York Angels, the Harvard Angels, they have a lot more members. They've been doing this a lot longer. They could put hundreds of thousands of dollars together. But once you start to see raises of $2 million or more, usually that's going to be a challenging angel raise because of the time required. So usually when you get to $2 or $3 million raise, that's really a borderline between angels and VCs. And we have a lot of investors on the line here that have more experience in that area than I do, that may want to offer their opinion as well. But when we see valuations, we've invested in valuations as low as $2 million. The highest investment we've done based on valuation was a $12 million valuation, but it was for a company that had $3.5 million of revenue. So it was a multiple of revenue.
Let's see. So as an angel investor or group, are you more likely or biased to invest in a round that's north of 750,000 or be the lead investor in a round of around 400K and lower?
All those conversations are certainly in the space of angel investing. And what we do from the New York Area Angel Alliance, Once we're in due diligence with the startup, we refer those startups to all the other angel groups in the area. And we like to share good startups, and all the angel groups in New York City, we all share our startups. So once they get into due diligence with us or any other angel group in the area, they're automatically referred to probably a half a dozen or more angel groups. So to help, because yeah, if a company is going to raise $1 million and the Westchester Angels wants to put 100 in, we're not going to put the 100 until they raise the majority of the balance of the round. So it's in Angel Group's best interest to get more interest. We have never ever been shut out of a round based on competition with other angel groups. It's collaboration. It's not competition.
So I'm looking at the time right now, and it looks like we've got about 10 minutes left. So I just want to make sure that we can get in some last thoughts, and anybody that is interested in either looking into being an investor or working with the Westchester Angels, just want to give enough time for that. So Sandy, just closing thoughts. I mean, things that we can kind of take out of this, reasons to be optimistic, whether you're an investor or a startup, things that we should be looking forward to coming out of the Angels in the coming weeks and months.
Listen, this is a really challenging time. You know, I'm living in constant fear because I think my wife may shoot me very shortly because we're living together. God bless her. But listen, our country we've gone through world wars. We've gone through 9/11. We've gone through the crisis, the banking crisis in 2008. In 2008, we came a couple of steps away from anarchy if the banks open. The business model with the Fed that was created is a really good model. Warren makes a living by investing in depressed times and not investing in the best times. He invests when there's fear and he sells when there's greed. So we will get through this as a country. It may take some time, but we prefer to look at the glass half full. That there's going to be opportunities out there that may not have presented themselves in the past, maybe with lower valuations, maybe in industries that are poised to thrive in this atmosphere. So we're looking at this as an opportunity going forward. And at the same time, we're doing our best to help through White Plains Hospital, through Westchester Economic Development Organization. And as I say, we're going to be reaching out to all the companies that have applied to us on GUST with half-hour mentorship, free, no strings attached, so their GUST applications could be the best they could possibly be.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay, here's an interesting one. So do you look at companies' social media presence at all? Is that part of your due diligence when you're considering investing?
Yeah, and you know, when a company says that, we ask them how you're going to execute, and they say social media, we usually say next. But social media, you have to tell us, you know, we're investors of average intelligence. We have to be taken by the hand and shown how you plan to execute. Social media is certainly a viable way to do it, but just don't say social media. We want to know exactly how you're going to use social media to build your brand, to increase your sales and reach your target clients. You know, social media is a really good way to reduce your price of customer acquisition. So social media is a very important part of scaling for a lot of companies, but we have to know the specifics. Just don't say social media.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, great. So if anyone has any other questions, just drop them in the chat. I'm just staring at that and rattling them off as they come in.
So anybody on the conversation, free feel to email me if I could be of any further help. Sandy, SANDY at WestchesterAngelsPlural.com. I spend a lot of time on the phone with startups trying to guide them. If you're an investor and you're looking for an angel group, we would certainly welcome. You have to be an accredited investor to be an angel. And the accredited investor details are on the net, so you could look at it. Most angel groups are going to have you sign a document. All angel groups will have you sign a document stating that you are an accredited investor. But again, we're here to help. We want to see startups succeed, whether we invest or not. and we pool our talents with all the really terrific angel groups in the city. And it's a really fun space if you're an angel investor. There's no shortage of startups looking for funding, and it's going to keep this old guy young as I go forward.
Cool. All right. So here's another one. So do you examine and value companies' social conscience, commitment to environment, or female ownership? Are those things that you take into consideration?
Yeah. You know, when I look at leaders, I don't really care if you're black or white, big or tall, if you're Indian, if you're American, if you're Portuguese. We only see shades of green. That's the only thing we say is, can you be a leader and can you execute? We don't really care your ethnic background, your sexual orientation is insignificant to us. There are angel groups in New York City where those are requirements. The Golden Seeds will only invest in companies led by or have a female in the C-suite. The 37 Angels follow. They are a group of female investors. The Gangels, which has grown in leaps and bounds, they're really good friends. I love those guys. That is the LGBT angel group. They really have morphed into a larger, more of a VC investment, but they only invest in companies that are led by or have a significant member that's part of the LGBT community. So if you're interested, go to the New York area, nyareaangelalliance.com. That is a one-stop shop for all of the angel groups in the area. You could click on their links and you can find out each angel group's temperament and personality, and that's why it was created.
Very cool. All right, so we'll see if we can tackle this one. This one gets into the CARES Act a little bit, so we'll see how far we can push this one. But are there any provisions in the CARES Act that assist startups primed for angel investors?
I am not familiar with that. That's a conversation that kind of went over my head. That's a changing conversation. Those conversations I'm really not qualified to talk about. But most every startup is looking for government funding one way or the other, payroll protection, SBA loans, and we're working with Bridget Gibbons and Deb Novick of the Westchester County Development Organization to see where we can help. Also with Community Capital New York and the TAP, which is the Acceleration Project, another nonprofit, and we'll be helping startups once they receive that funding and helping them scale their businesses back.
Sandy, there are plenty of grants out there.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks very much. I'm not familiar with the grants or the government lending opportunities. Those questions are better suited to people that have experience in those areas. Thank you, Jeff, for that. You're right.
Cool. All right, so I think we're kind of wrapping this up. If you want to just let people know if they're interested in possibly getting involved with the Westchester Angels, whether it be on the investment side or on the startup side, just let people know. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'd be happy if there's an accredited investor that you would like to join our virtual meeting. We allow accredited investors to join. You email me and we'll have you sign the accredited investor form. Then you're more than welcome to join one meeting as our guest.
Very cool. Great. All right. Well, everybody, I think we're going to call it here. Thanks for joining us. Koi Creative Space and Sandy Wollman of the Westchester Angels and the New York Angel Alliance. Hope everybody stays safe, happy, healthy, and sane as we're going through this interesting time together but apart. Everyone take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, people.